Hey, welcome back everybody. So this is going to be part 2 of our OSR review of Journey to the Overland. Now, when we left off last time, we had made it to page 18, and we're going to be taking a look at the supply list. Obviously, if you haven't seen the first part, you should probably watch that first. And this picks up from there. So I'm not gonna go back over what we already covered, but we're gonna pick up from there. Now, basically, this is kind of a basic supply list, and I will say that in the game's current form, there's one master supply list that no matter what town you're in, you're going to purchase off the same supply list. I am considering making the supply list unique to which town you are in. I haven't quite pulled that trigger yet. And I mean, there's not necessarily a reason like because it would be hard to do. I just don't know if there's enough items in a supply list to make every town have its own supply list, because then I'd be just reproducing this table. Or whether I should make a unique supply list for each town, which says, okay, these are the things that you can only get in this town. And that's kind of what I'm leaning to. So that you would have certain towns where you can only get certain weapons. Excuse me. Like right now, there are aspects of that. Like Dwarf Town or the Dwarven towns, it's the only place you can get iron armor and iron weapons. And there are certain creatures and characters, especially when it comes to magic, that iron is more resistant than regular metals or steels. But if you want that, you have to go to Dwarf Town and buy it, and then you can specify that you want it iron, and you pay a little more. What I'm thinking of doing is putting in unique supply tables for each town. So say, for example, you're in the town of Igloo, which is kind of a northern, kind of Alaskan Arctic town. You know, perhaps you could buy harpoons, okay? But you couldn't get harpoons anywhere else. And so I think that would be worthwhile. But I don't want to like recreate each town and say, well, if you want boots, they're this much in Milesteel and they're this much in Igloo. I could justify that by saying, hey, it's harder to buy boots and they're more expensive here. But, you know, at this point, I don't know how many pages that would add to the new rule book and whether it would be that applicable. But I don't know. I'm leaning toward it, which means I'll probably do it. So anyway, you have your supply list. And as I said, like it says here, iron cast weapons, they're at Dwarf Town only. And you add that extra. Now we get into the first objectives of the game, which is the 5 weapons of power. And you can see here we've got color art. Most of the rule book is kind of this black and white cinematography feel to it, which I really like, and that is on purpose because I really want to preserve kind of the old school cinematography feel. You know, like if you look at that and you kind of had the phony water stains and things. So I didn't want the whole rule book to be color, because I'm not trying to do like a Pathfinder module. This is meant to evoke an old school feeling, right? I want the black and white art. I want the, you know, the kind of loomish format. But I also wanted color in certain places to just kind of pop out things that deserve to be in color. And so the first of that in this book are your weapons of power. And I'm not going to get into each item because that might spoil it for you. But you have a weapon called the Blood Blade, which is probably what you think when you use it. You have to cut yourself. And I don't know, I may have even gotten that from, I think it was Elric. Is it Elric who has a blade that like every time he uses it, it has to have some kind of blood or something? You have what is called the Emerald Cross, which is believed to be a holy relic made from parts of the cross of Christ. You have what is called the Resurrection Ring, which is a holy relic believed to have been worn by Lazarus when he was raised from the dead by Christ. You have a Bow of Light, which is a powerful weapon of the elves. And then you have the peaceful palms, which are believed to have been a holy relic laid on the road to Jerusalem as Christ entered Jerusalem. And so the Christian theme is very high in this game. I will tell you that. If you are offended by that, then you probably do not want to buy this game. And the reason that it is very high in the game is because in medieval Europe, the period from Constantine probably up until the 19th century, with a so-called Age of Enlightenment, that was kind of the most powerful holy relics were all associated with the Christian church. Now, there are relics in this game, like the Bow of Light, that are not associated with Christianity and Christ, but they're a little bit harder to find and harder to come by. And this is kind of an age where the kings and the governments and the powers, magic exists in the Overland, wizards exist in the Overland, but they are not sanctioned or condoned. So the king kind of keeps an eye on any given time at how much magic and things is occurring, and he will send knights out on quests if he thinks it's getting out of hand. So it goes back, it harkens back to like the age of Arthur and the quest. And if you read King Arthur, a lot of his quests were the Christian knights going to defeat pagan druids or pagan wizards or pagan kings. And so that is mimicked in here. I drew very heavily on the Arthurian mythos. So that is in Journey to the Overland. And even when I write supplements and modules, I tend to put that on there. And I say, okay, what is going on in the Overland? Does the king have need to be worried that there's too much magic going around? And that's just a little background for you. So this is the second objective, which is called Acquire Gold to Raise an Army. This objective is kind of straightforward. It's all about acquiring as much gold as you can and then buying troops with it. So that's kind of a one-page objective. It's really not that hard to figure out. Objective 3 is you recruit allies. Every town in the Overland has a rival and an allied town. So, for example, if you wanted to attack Elf Mountain, their rival is Milesteel. So you could go to Milesteel and try to get their help to attack Elf Mountain. But their ally is King's Castle. Which means if you attack Elf Mountain, King's Castle is likely to send aid to help them. And again, this gets into the part of the game when you're using the troop counters. And this kind of comes back from my love of games like Avalon Hill games. I think they had one, was it called Divine Right? Or other types of games where they would use counters, and the counters would have little troop symbols and names and things on them. So I wanted to incorporate that in here. So there is an aspect of play where you can basically play most of your games as a commander, moving these counters around and attacking towns. But that is going to provoke other towns, and you could eventually wind up where you have just this massive world war going on. Because, you know, as you attack one town and their ally gets involved, another town gets involved, and if you attack them, then their ally might get involved, and it goes right down this list. So I have not actually gotten to play that much of that part of the rules because I have not had a character that has gotten that far yet, where they're leading troops. At least not in this version of my play. When I was younger, I actually did have a character that had a pretty good army. The next objective is you overthrow King Overlord. And in order to overthrow King Overlord, there's a couple of prerequisites. So the first thing you would have to do is siege King's Castle with troops. So if you're not able to lead troops in the game, you cannot overthrow King Overlord, right? So that is one of the ways that all of the objectives kind of build on each other. So for example, you need gold to buy troops. You buy troops to then recruit allies. Once you have enough troops and allies, you can besiege King's Castle. And if you besiege King's Castle, their rival is actually Igloo. So the troops of Igloo, for whatever reason, I guess, would be available to help you attack King's castle. But if you do besiege the castle and you win that part of the game, you then enter the castle. And at this part is just your character. This is one of those scenarios where you cannot have NPC comrades help you. It would just be your character. You would enter the castle, and then you would basically go through these series of rooms until you encounter the king. And if you defeat the king, there's kind of a small section on ruling the Overland. Things you're required to do as the ruler. Like, for example, you have to host a royal hunt every month. This is a page of items that you get from the king, right? He has his horse, a battle horn, his royal two-edged sword. And then we get to objective 5, which is defeating the wizard Mordecai. And Mordecai is kind of this enigmatic figure. If he looks a little bit like Gargamel, that's kind of on purpose. I just thought that was kind of a fun aspect. If you remember the Smurfs, this is again kind of a reflection, a nod to my childhood. I mean, everybody has seen the old Voldemort wizards, but it's not every day you kind of get this Gargamel with this little Caesar's wreath, laurel wreath on his head character. So I really like the way Louis Romano did that. But Mordecai is going to be a tougher fight than King Overlord. King Overlord, if you fight him, it's kind of a straight up fight. You know, attack, defend, and, you know, whoever's left standing wins. It's a straight out brawl. Mordecai, this is the closest thing to a dungeon in the game, right? And you're going to approach him in these rooms. So you go through room 1, you will encounter these flying spears. Room 2 is called the Black Orc, who you have to defeat. Room 3, you have to solve the riddle of the serpent. Room 4, you deal with the specter of death. Room 5, Hall of the Mindless Worshippers. And then you get to level 3 of the castle, okay? So you're moving up in this castle. And on level 3, day 1, you deal with the mirror images. Day 2, the serpent-headed lion. Day 3, the blocked door. Day 7, the great wizard Mordecai. So by day 7, you actually encounter Mordecai, who is very, very powerful as well. So that is not going to be an easy fight. And then day 8, after you defeat Mordecai, you get to raid his treasure room, which is always the funnest part, isn't it? And this is actually, Mordecai has a list of spells that are actually not available to anybody but him. And so, and these are all contained on scrolls. And if you defeat him, you have access to these spells now because you can take his scrolls. And that's in his magic room. So again, I've never got into that part of the book. I've never made it that far where I was able to use any of that. We have the general rules of play. Again, now that is one thing I will say that that I didn't really pay that much attention to when I published the book from my initial notebook and binders, is a lot of the sections, at least some of the sections that are kind of in the back, are going to be getting moved closer to the front. Because really the objectives should kind of come after all of the basic mechanics. And I just kind of put this in print format the same way it existed in the binder when I first created it when I was 16. And what you have to realize is I added to it and worked on it over a number, about 4 years. So a lot of the stuff was not necessarily in order. It was just kind of in the order that I'd write a rule section and I'd stick it in the binder. And when I published it, I really didn't pay that much attention to moving everything around. The guy I worked with, we were working long distance, so we never really was able to sit down and say, hey, wouldn't it be better to put this here or put that there? So I am going to try to correct that in the second version. Here we start getting into skills. And this again is a section that borrows heavily from the Dragon Quest role-playing game, because a lot of these skills are exact same skills that were in Dragon Quest. So unlike the D&D skills, you probably won't find skills in here that you might expect to find from Dungeons and Dragons. But if you were to pick up the Dragon Quest role-playing book, which I have, and like I was going through it the other day, they have Alchemist in there. Like, I don't think nobody ever plays an Alchemist in D&D anymore. I don't even know if that's a real skill. But in Dragon Quest, that was like one of the coolest skills. They had a whole couple of pages. So I think I had done a note on the skills just to kind of give you an idea. Now, again, in this game, you have skills, and then you have, and I'm going to kind of move forward a little bit, you have what are called advanced skills. And again, that is something that was borrowed from Dragon Quest. It's an old school mechanic where there were skills that everyone could get, and I think even D&D did this at one point. But there's also then your advanced skills. Now, in the game, really the only difference between advanced skills and regular skills is going to be their cost in XPs. Typically, your regular skills will run 5 to 10,000 XPs. Your advanced skills are going to start at, 15 or 20, I think. And I will explain how the XP purchase system works when we get there. But in the game, there are 7 basic skills, and there are 8 advanced skills. So Alchemist is a basic skill. And this is just some page with some of the Alchemist solutions he can prepare. Warrior is a basic skill. Warrior is a skill you must have to lead troops, or else you must be a knight. So only warriors or knights can lead troops. So if you want to accomplish some of the higher objectives that require you to lead troops, you would need one of those 2 skills. And again, that goes to what I said with NPC comrades in the first video. If you are a wizard, for example, and you do want to defeat King Overlord, you will not be able to defeat him just as a wizard because you won't be able to lead troops. Right? And I'm not sure if warriors can get wizard skill. Because some of the skills are mutually exclusive. So it will tell you if you have this skill, you can't have the other skill. Especially with the advanced skills. So if we go to wizard, for example, we'll go up here. Because this is all the skill section. So it says here for wizards. Oh, too far. So it tells you have to have a minimum wisdom score of 70%. And you must have studied magic in at least 3 towns. And so I don't see here as far as a restriction on other classes. The only thing it says here is a knight cannot become a wizard and a wizard cannot become a knight. So technically you could be a warrior wizard, but you would need warrior skill to lead troops. You have thief, which is a basic skill. And then there's a table on joining the thieves guild. You have merchant skill, which again would help you with the, I think it's the second objective, which is raising gold. Merchants have an ability to amass a huge amount of gold. But I mean, you're going to pay 10,000 XPs for that. So you're not going to be able to use some of the fighting skills early on. But you could raise a lot of gold quickly as a merchant. I've never played a merchant yet. You have minstrel skill or minstrel skill, which would help you with NPC checks and presence score checks, which are very important in the game. But it's only 5,000. So, I mean, you could pick that up later or early. You do begin the game with 5,000 XPs to spend. Healer skill. This is a basic skill here. Assassin skill is a basic skill, which probably should be higher up, because this is actually a very deadly skill. This one may get bumped up in the second edition. I may bump Assassin up to an advanced skill and make it higher cost. You have fighter skill. So now we're into the advanced skills, which include the fighter, the barbarian, the berserker, the cleric, the ranger. The ranger is getting a bump in the other edition as well. I can tell you that now. The ranger is going to become a much more useful skill to have. Admiral skill. And I did tell you there's rules as far as leading ships and things and commanding ships. You would need Admiral skill for that. I'm considering a Buccaneer skill, but I haven't been able to kind of rationalize how I'm going to distinguish it enough from Admiral skill. But it's still a possibility that we will see a Buccaneer skill, which I think would be cool. I think the Admiral would be more of your kind of your military captain, whereas your Buccaneer would be kind of more of your pirate. And then of course we looked at Wizard skill. And then this is interesting the way I do wizards in this game. And this is called your magic, I think this is a magic strength table, or your magic strength, which are called your MSTs. So in this game, in order to control magic, all wizards need MSTs to cast spells, or what I call wards, to release wards. Because there's this whole mythology that basically all magic and spells do is alter reality. And so they're called wards because these wards are what controls reality. And if you learn what the wards are, you can use spells to alter their reality. And the people who do this are called wizards or wardens. But all of them, in order to do any spell, you have to have a certain number of magic strength points. And wizards gain 100, I think it is, every month. They gain 100 MSTs. So when you look at the spell book, or at least the spells or the wards that are the name of the wards that are available to them to release, it will give you the name, it will give you the effect, or the use and the effect, and then there's a cause for failure and a cause for success. Now, in addition, some of these wards have fumbles that are built in. So instead of having a fumble table, which is an old school mechanic, some of the wards have fumbles that in addition to failing, something else happens if you fail. But you will spend magic strength whether you succeed or fail at trying to cast a spell. So for example, this one called the Ethereal Sword or Ethereal Sword. If you succeed, it costs you 80 MSTs a week to maintain this sword. And they have a maintenance cost in them. Some of them do, some of them don't. But if it's like a sword that's basically this glowing, shimmering sword, that will cost you 80 MSTs a week, which is basically almost a month's worth of your magic strength to maintain this sword for a week. But even if you fail, that's 40 MSTs gone. So even in a combat, if you have this powerful wizard with 500 MSTs, if his wizard skill is low and he's missing some of these rolls, he is going to be losing MSTs. And as he loses them, there's less and less spells or wards that he can release, right? All of a sudden, his options become slim. And that's kind of the way magic is controlled in this game. And I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18, 27. There's about 28 available to the wizards now. That may get a bump, or I may just reserve that for another supplement altogether. Another advanced skill is Spy, which is kind of an advancement of Thief. In fact, I think you have to have Thief skill to get Spy skill. I have not used Spy skill that much, although there are scenarios where it will say if you have Spy skill. Then we get into the experience points. And again, this is an old school mechanic in the game because you earn experience points just about for everything you do in the game. You have combat actions and then non-combat actions if you're looking at this table. So if you are in combat, you usually get 1,000 XPs per level of your opponent. And the cards will tell you what their level is when you encounter them. And then you also get them if it's a wizard. And these are cumulative. So if you kill a level 3 wizard, you would get 3,000 because he was level 3. And then another 1,000 because he was a wizard. So that would be 4,000 XPs from killing just a level 3 wizard. And like I said, they're cumulative. These are your non-combat things that you get XPs for. Excuse me. So if you acquire a skill, you actually gain 1,000 XP. So you almost get a rebate when you buy a skill. It's not much, but you get a rebate if you buy an advanced skill. If you get a weapon of power, that's 5,000. If you engage in a war is basically if you have troops and you have a battle that's going on for longer than 2 weeks, that's called a war. You would get 2,500 XPs. You get XPs for surviving a fight in the Overland arena. And there is an arena in the game called the Overland Arena. Now, what is important, though, is your XPs to spend. And that's this table right here. And so the way this works is as you acquire experience points, you acquire XPs to spend. And again, I think this is a mechanic I got out of Dragon Quest. I can't remember. But I think Dragon Quest was the one where you actually bought your skills with XPs. And that's what you do in this game. So these are what you use to buy your skills with, not these. And that's important. And even when you buy a skill, these do not go down. Your overall experience points do not go down from buying skills. The only thing that would go down is your XPs to spend. And I think the other thing I would point out is, so if you are at 30,000 and everybody begins the game with 5,000 XPs to spend, and you get to 30,001, you would gain another 10,000 XPs to spend. So assuming you hadn't used these, you'd have a total of 15,000 XPs to spend. Now, these are not every time you hit 30,000 more XP, you get 10,000 more to spend. These are thresholds. And as you cross a threshold, you get this specific amount. And that's one thing to remember, right? This is not like a slot machine. These do not tally up, for every 300 you grab another 26,000. No, it's basically when you cross this threshold, you get that amount. When you cross this threshold, you get that amount, right? So as cumulative, if you got to say, for example, 125,000 XPs, you would have acquired approximately 15, 25, 30, 43,000 XPs to spend. And that's the way to look at that. I mean, this goes up, and then also your experience points determines your character's level. So you go from level 1 to theoretically level 15. This may get revamped because some of these levels you would probably never reach, and even if you did, it would be inconsequential to the gameplay. I always say that level 4 is probably a very high character in this game. By the time you got up here, you would have over 40,000 XPs, probably 2 or 3 skills. But I may take a look at this. One of the reasons I try to control it, though, is because as you get XPs to spend, you can pick up more skills. And as you pick up skills, your character becomes more powerful. So I didn't want level 3 characters who could defeat every scenario in the game, like Valron or something. So I kind of made it more difficult. But I may tweak this a bit because, heck, I think I've been playing a character now for a real year. And I think in the game I've been playing him for about 8 months of gameplay. And I think he has about 60,000 or is it 40,000 XPs. And he hasn't really done that much. I'm sure he could probably have more than that. So I don't know, but that's something I would like to take a look at if I ever had a way of gauging where characters were at, like at what pace characters were accumulating XPs. I mean, pretty much once I think I've got the game to the point where everything that can be done with it is out there, I would like to kind of create some societies or metrics just to see, where the averages and medians are falling, and then maybe look at adjusting that. Now, one of the other things with skills, and I'm going to do this and then close this one out because we're going on half an hour for part 2, is as you go up in levels in this game, you will gain access to certain benefits in the kingdom, or basically benefits in the overland or the game. And this basically means as you go higher from like a level 1 to a level 2 or 3 character, you are recognized throughout the overland as an important person. So it's sort of like you go from being mayor to governor to a senator, right? People start to know you more and you get certain perks. And in this game, if you're a level 1 through 4 character, you just follow the normal rules. When you get to level 5 and 6, first of all, elves add 10 to their endurance, right? They're starting to get more longevity and their lifespan is increasing. But then it says here, level 5 and 6, these characters have been around a while and are pretty much familiar with Overland. They minus 30 from their percent chance of getting lost in any terrain. It says characters at this level are also pretty well known and add 10 to any NPC reaction roll with humanoid characters. So it's just a little perk if you get to level 5 or 6, meaning basically you're not going to be getting lost all the time because you're familiar with the place. And people start to know who you are. So everybody, at least regular humanoids or demi-humans, are not going to be attacking you on sight. And then you had the same thing with level 7 and 8. What I really like about this, and I don't know where I got this from, I might have did this on my own, is as you get to level 7 and 8, you actually get access to certain items and equipment that regular people can't get. So you can get a warhorse helm, you can get a special longsword or lances. Now these actually are for your troops, I mean. So you can actually now buy troops that have long swords or lances. And as you get to level 9, you can join this thing called the Overland Council, which is like this body of rulers in the Overland that kind of keep the king in check, if you can believe that. Level 9 guys have some real cool perks, which is like in this game, level 9, you need like 400,000 XPs. So I may tweak that a bit. Yeah, I think I might tweak that a bit. All right, so we're going to stop there for part 2. And then when we come back, we're going to look at NPC characters a little more in depth. All right, so thanks, guys, if you're still with me. Take care. God bless.